I'm going to start this morning with Psalm 90. And I chose 90 from uh, this book, that we're prayers from the Psalms on a daily basis. Lord, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You turn us back to dust and say, turn back, you mortals. For 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it is past, or like a watch in the night. You sweep them away, they are like a dream, like grass that is renewed in the morning. In the morning it flourishes and is renewed, in the evening it fades and withers. For we are consumed by your anger, by your wrath we are overwhelmed. You have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins in the light of your countenance. For all our days pass away under your wrath. 1 year comes to an end like a sigh. The days of our life are 70 years, or perhaps 80. That's a scary thought. If we are strong, even their span is only toil and trouble. They are soon gone and we fly away. Who considers the power of your anger? Your wrath is as great as the fear that is due you. So teach us to count our days that we may gain a wise heart. Turn, O Lord, how long? Have compassion on your servants. Satisfy us in the morning with your steadfast love, so that we may rejoice and be glad in all our days. Make us glad as many days as you have afflicted us, as many years as we have seen evil. Let your work be manifest to your servants, and your glorious power to their children. Let the favor of the Lord our God be upon us, and prosper for us the work of our hands. O prosper the work of our hands. So a little bit of uplifting, a little bit of it's life. There are good times, there are bad times. But there was one verse in there, my favorite Robert Frost poem, and I can't remember it precisely. It's only 2 lines long. So that says something about my old lady memory. Dear God, I will forgive, if you will forgive me my sins against you, I will forgive you your one sin against me. Which basically was putting him here.
Oh, boy, that borders on being an existential prayer.
Yeah.
Borders on it.
Yeah.
If God wasn't involved, it would be.
Yeah. Okay. Back to this book.
Which will we finish by the end of the year?
Only if Susan and Kathy go real fast, because the last 2 weeks we've only covered a couple of pages. I, on the other hand, plan on finishing this chapter because I am tired of this chapter. I'm tired of this book. So, this chapter is about the family of Annas, who was a high priest, and his 5 sons, who in order were also high priests, and how they conflicted with various people in the Jesus movement. So last week, Angie talked about the martyrdom of Stephen. And so today I'm starting with, and if you're in the book, this is page 103, and so I'm going to talk fast because I am going to finish this chapter. It's kind of the same story over and over and over again. Somebody from the Jesus movement runs afoul of one of the high priests and or the Roman procurator, whatever his name was, and they get killed. Over and over and over. So today we start out with James, the son of Zebedee. And you may remember that this is the James of James and John, the brothers, who were apostles and whose mother wanted them on either side of Jesus. Remember that story. So James is killed by Agrippa the First, who is one of Herod the Great's grandsons. And that was probably to avoid political disturbances. There's a lot of that this time in history. You know, the Romans, remember Pax Romana, the peace of the Romans, we talked about this many, many years ago, that Rome maintained peace with an iron fist. We're going to have peace at all costs. You disturb the peace, you're dead. And so that's probably what's going on here. It's also very likely he acted in agreement with temple leaders who also want to keep the peace because they want to keep their jobs as the high priest. You know, it's one of honor. I'm assuming there may be some money attached to it. We are greedy as humans. The book of Acts does not specifically say that he acted in concert with the temple leaders, but it makes sense. And Agrippa launched a pogrom against the Christians. And part of what was happening politically is that the Roman Emperor Caligula wanted to have his image erected in the city of Jerusalem. And of course, that goes against the Jewish law. There will be no graven images. And that started a huge uprising with the Jews. And Caligula falls out of favor. And the next emperor goes, "Oh, that was stupid. We're not going to do that. Y'all just calm down. We're not going to do that." Then the second run-in with this family of Annas was Peter. So Peter, being Peter, and I'll use this as a time to plug the television series The Chosen. Have you watched it?
Watched a couple of the seasons, so we're not up to date on it.
But
'Cause
number 5 is out in the theaters. Season 5's out in the theaters, but it hasn't made it to Prime yet, so we haven't seen that either. But yeah, if you haven't watched The Chosen, you should do so. It puts flesh on the bare bones stories of the.
Is it accurate? I
Um,
mean, the reason I asked is that series, the Bible, I couldn't even watch it. It was so inaccurate and such nonsense. I was just wondering about The Chosen.
well, you may not like it because there obviously is some fictional stuff going on, but there are also great accuracies because I can look at it and go, okay, that's from the Bible. They're making this up.
Okay, great.
It-
Thanks.
so,
Okay.
Yeah, Jamie said it was for accuracy, worth watching, put it that way. So, and as Sarah just said, that they have to do a fair amount of embellishment, particularly character structures.
Right.
Okay, but of the actual incidences and that, it stayed pretty true to story.
yeah.
Oh, that's good to know. So it's on Prime. We'll have to
Yes.
start. Okay, thanks. All right.
And there are 4 seasons out there available on Prime.
Yeah, we're in season 3 right now.
And season 4 leads up to Jesus coming into Jerusalem, if I remember right. So I think season 5 is, because the seasons are only 7 or 8 episodes. I think season 5 is Holy Week. But yeah, I can watch it and go, ooh, that's accurate. That's, yeah.
Yeah, we binge watch it. We'll watch a whole
We did
season
too, yeah.
in 2 days.
Yeah. Okay, so I do like the way they portray Peter as being a hot-headed
Mhm.
young man who is just, they fleshed him out to match what we know about him from the Bible.
I like what they did with Matthew as taxpayer,
Yes,
the
I do
tax
too.
collector.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they make Matthew
quirkish.
quirkish. I think they almost autistic.
Well, it's also what I thought was interesting, and you would expect it for the time, even though it's not really put in the Bible. Nobody liked him. He was a tax collector.
Yeah, nobody liked
Nobody
him.
liked him.
But at a minimum, he was obsessive
Yes.
in
Yeah.
terms of keeping very, very,
Yeah.
very, very accurate
Yeah,
records.
yeah.
And no personality, which a lot of people believe that of accountancy, but today, obviously not true.
Well, you're splurges.
So anyway, so Peter runs afoul of the family of Annas, and has yet another, and I didn't realize that he miraculously escapes from prison twice. Supposedly in Acts, there is a second miraculous escape from prison. Acts is written as if this is a miracle, but the author of this book speculates that it's possible and believable that there was some human interaction to help get Peter out. One point that Craig Evans makes in this book is that the Jesus movement had a lot of popular support in terms of the populace realizing and recognizing that there was a lot of corruption in the temple hierarchy. And the Jesus movement is trying to go against that and working on the behalf of the common person. So they had a lot of support. And they were held in high regard. The aristocratic priesthood was viewed with misgivings by many Jews, and the Jesus community is seen as a reforming movement, freely distributing money and goods to those in need and healing the sick. Peter's killing, which happens later, is probably part of the same pogrom that was mentioned earlier. So Peter, even though he escapes prison, does end up being martyred. Then we come to Paul, and remember that in this is between the execution of Jesus and Paul's death. He goes from being Saul, who is actively persecuting Christians, to his conversion on the road to Damascus, and now he is Paul. And even though Evans has him in this chapter of all these people that ran amok of the family of Annas, he says Paul probably didn't. There's no evidence in the Bible that Paul runs into any of these high priests. But nonetheless, he's here. He did run into Ananias, son of Nicodemus. I have no idea who these people were, and was charged with attempts to desecrate or in some way injure the temple. I do remember the story in Acts that Paul took some Greeks into the temple beyond the Greek court. You know, the temple was in, I don't see a good picture of it. The temple, you know, the Holy of Holies was small, and then there was the courtyard where the Jewish men could go, and then there was a courtyard where the Jewish women could go, and then outside there was the courtyard where the Greeks could go. And Paul took a Greek beyond where he should have. But he defends himself.
He wasn't in Jerusalem much to bump into those guys either, you know. Paul.
No, that is true. He was not there very often. But when Acts ends, he's in prison. Evan says that in all probability, what spares Paul is Roman citizenship and his appeal to Caesar. Then we come to James, the brother of Jesus, and James manages to live until the year 61 or 62. So he lives another 30 plus years after Jesus is crucified. And he's stays in Jerusalem, and we've talked about this earlier. He is considered the leader of the Jesus movement in Jerusalem. So I'm making the assumption that he was very astute politically. He manages to not completely run afoul of the people who are in power. So the book of Acts ends before James dies. So we don't have biblical knowledge of this, but Josephus tells this story because it connects to one of the high priests. So I want to read something out of the book. Oh, I haven't gotten there yet. Okay. Now the report, this is from Josephus. Now the report goes that this elder Ananias, which is another spelling of Annas, so the senior Annas and his 5 sons, for he had 5 sons who all performed the office of a high priest to God, and he had himself enjoyed that dignity a long time formerly, which had never happened to any other of our high priests. But this younger Annas, who, as we have told you already, took the high priesthood and was a bold man in his temper and very insolent. He was also of the sect of the Sadducees, who were very rigid in judging offenders, above all the rest of the Jews, as we have already observed. When therefore Annas was of this disposition, he thought he now had a proper opportunity to exercise his authority. Festus, who was the Roman governor there, was dead, and Albinus, who is the new coming governor, but he was still upon the road. So there's no Roman governor there at this time. So Annas assembles the Sanhedrin of judges and brought before them the brother of Jesus, who was called Christ, whose name was James, and some others. And when he had formed an accusation against them as breakers of the law, he delivered them to be stoned. But as for those who seemed the most equitable of the citizens, and such as were the most uneasy at the breach of laws, they disliked what was done, and they also sent to the king, this is Agrippa II, desiring him to send to Annas that he should act no more, for what they had already done was not to be justified. So Annas took advantage of the fact there's no Roman governor there, has James and some others stoned, and there's some folks there going, this isn't right, don't do this, and they sent, so that's how James got killed when he got killed. Annas taking unfair advantage of the lack of governor being there. So James dies in the year 62. So he was probably in his late 50s or early 60s. And then Evans goes on to do a very interesting comparison to the death of Jesus to the death of his brother James. So I'm going to read, and this is easier reading because it's not written 2,000 years ago. Jesus had been accused of blasphemy and pretending to royal authority, while James was accused of being a lawbreaker. Both were condemned by high priest, and the two high priests were related by marriage. Jesus was handed over to the Roman governor, who complied with the wishes of the high priest, and James was executed without the approval of the Roman authority. We may assume that neither Festus nor Albinus would have approved. In the case of Jesus, Pilate saw warrant and execution. In the case of John, there was no such case to be made. And he's assuming that if the Roman governor had been in place, Annas would not have done what he did.
Yeah, well, didn't Rome have the rule that only Roman governors could condemn you to death?
Right.
That's
And
what
we
I thought.
talked about that last week, that the Jews did not have the authority
Right.
to execute anybody. So Annas is really, or the son of Annas, is really taking advantage of the situation. James was kind of in the wrong time, wrong place at the wrong time. We should also remember that Roman governors had no interest in meddling in purely religious matters. One thinks of the position adopted by the proconsul Gallio. If it were a matter of crime or serious villainy, I would be justified in accepting the complaint of you Jews. But since it is a matter of question about words and names in your own law, see to it yourselves. I refuse to be a judge of these things. And that's out of the book of Acts. So there's no reason to believe that under ordinary circumstances, the policies of Pilate in the time of Jesus, or either Festus or Albinus in the time of James, would have been significantly different. So he's just pointing out the two Galilean brothers were put to death either directly or indirectly by two high priest brothers-in-law, Caiaphas and Annas. So some interesting comparisons there.
There was general, during this time, I think too, just general widespread persecution, because if we remember, the letter of Hebrews was written to the Christians to say, don't give up, don't go back to Judaism because of this persecution. And that was written about 68. So,
Yes. And so that persecution at this time ramps up considerably. Then the next person, and Harold, I want to know if you've ever heard of this guy, because I have not. Jesus, the son of Ananias.
no, I have not.
Okay, this is a peasant, and once James is martyred, this guy comes out and he starts Prophesying, he is quoting the book of Jeremiah, which Jesus also quoted, where Jeremiah is saying, y'all need to, talking to the temple authorities, need to clean up your act. God's going to bring his wrath on you. And he preached for several years, and he ends up also running amok of the temple hierarchy. And the priest who opposed him called for his death. And he is killed in 69. And remember, in 66, the war against Rome is ramping up. Harold, do you remember when that war actually started? Because I don't, and the book didn't say.
All right, which war are we, which
The
one?
war that ends up with the destruction of the temple.
Oh, shucks. I'll get back to you in a minute. The Zealots, the war, the Zealots. I can't remember what year it started. No, I'm sorry.
No problem. So this Jesus ben Ananias is, he is, it's just like I said earlier, it's a repeat of the same thing. He comes out, is preaching, prophesying, and he's also the part of Jeremiah. It's the stone that has been cast aside by the builders becomes the cornerstone of the new building. He takes that quotation out of Jeremiah. So that's just one more person, which very quickly brings us to the end of this chapter.
And we could have a whole year study on the comparison of that guy. I remember the incident, not the name, but to compare him to Christ.
Yes.
That's a year-long study because both were put to death. Why, the only reason Christ is known and he's not, the resurrection. But, that's a year-long study right there.
Well, yeah. I'm not going to do that. Yeah, it's like last week, Angie did a wonderful job. She covered 2 whole pages. She did just on Stephen. But the rest of this chapter is just the same old, same old, same old. And I personally just didn't feel the need for going through all that again. So any other comments? I really wasn't planning on being quite this brief. I thought I'd have more people here to talk. So let me read just the last chapter, not the last chapter, the last paragraph, because he's setting up chapter 6, which I didn't bother to look at. In chapter 6, the author says, I shall review some major developments in the life of the Jesus movement during the years following the capture of Jerusalem and the destruction of the city's famous temple. This movement is increasingly known as the church and its followers as Christians. The controversies that emerged in the first 40 years adumbrate. I'm not familiar with that word. Controversy still to come. So this book shows how many people are, this chapter, how many people are martyred up to the beginning of that war. And so we get into the war more next week. So short and sweet.
Well done, Teach.
Anything else y'all want to talk about?
Hey, Harold, what are you doing on Friday, this Friday?
Physical therapy.
Oh, okay. You got a better day this week? Stop by. I could stop by.
I think any day this week besides Friday.
um,
we'll talk about, later, but
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
I hope to get the sling off on Tuesday, but I hoped it last Tuesday and Tuesday before that too. So they keep saying not yet. So
Yeah,
anyway,
one of the writers that I drive for the Shepherd Center, she's been going to some kind of physical therapy, and she keeps saying 2 more sessions.
yeah.
And that was a month ago. Well, they said 2 more sessions.
Well, they told me it was going to be 8 to 12 weeks, and this Tuesday it'll be 9 weeks. Okay, so we're right on schedule, so to speak.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I can put things in here. I mean, I could shoplift and nobody knows. Just kidding.
Yeah, that's the
Has,
most sling I've ever seen.
Oh, this is the second time I've had it. I have. It's got the little pillow in it. Rest isolated right along my belly,
Oh,
but they is to keep it away from the arm. So,
yeah. Okay.
anyway,
has this author written any other study books? That it seems like I saw something somewhere.
Yes.
I sort of really like this author because he really deals with facts versus feelings and imagination and fantasies,
Yes, I like reading this book. I'm not enjoying teaching it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm enjoying this the study. But he is so very, 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 very nitpicky. But yeah,
Well, ain't that a good thing?
as long as you're not the teacher, yeah. If I can find my Amazon icon, I'll look him up. Because I think Kathy talked about something he wrote, something else he wrote. Several books. The Resurrection of the Son of God, and in parentheses, Christian Origins and the Question of God, volume 3, so I assume there are other volumes. What Grace Is, Meditations on the Mercy of God, Jesus and the Manuscripts, Fabricating Jesus, How Modern Scholars Distort the Gospels, Exploring the Origins of the Bible, Canon Formation and Historical Literacy, and something else. So yeah, several books.
Yeah, I mean, I just, well, this class historically has dealt with facts a lot, and I just, that's, I thought, it's been like a real study class, which is what I have enjoyed so much through the years. But, so
Well, one I didn't care for this chapter because there was some speculation, and his speculation makes sense, and he even says there's no documentation to prove that this happened, but given the political and religious um, thought of the time, it would make sense that blah 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 blah.
and I liked even presenting that way versus this is what happened.
Yes.
And only I know.
Yeah. But yeah, we could. I'd be willing to tackle another one of these books, I guess. Just not next year. I do want to share on a personal note. I had something that has really gotten me, given me a smile this week. I got a message from a woman that I was friends with 60 years ago. We lost track of each other probably 58 years ago, and she found me, I guess, on Facebook and sent me a message through Messenger with a picture of a ceramic box with an inscription on the inside where I gave it to her probably as a birthday present, I'm thinking. And it's dated the summer of 1965.
wow.
Yeah. And so, we've been messaging back and forth and sharing memories. But that's been really cool that somebody tracked me down after 60 years. And I found her mother did pottery as a hobby, and I still have a picture that her mother made and gave my mother as a gift. And it's inscribed the summer of 1963. But our houses backed up to each other. There was an alley between them where the trash truck came. But, so that's been real cool.